Hi, this is Debbie, and you're watching Color Everywhere. It is a gloriously cold, overcast day here in southeast Missouri, and I need some color. So I thought I would work on one of these projects, similar to what I'm showing you here. I just wanted to show you a few examples first before I got started. These are, I call them Zendoodling, because there's doodling and there's a little bit of Zentangling type work on them. They are not Zentangles, they are Zendoodles. I wanted to make that clear because the people who created the Zentangling program asked that that be done whenever you're referring to something that is similar to their work. So I did. Okay, so these are all hand-drawn. Some of them using, or some parts of it using stencils or templates, because it makes it easier, quicker, and gives you less time to draw and more time to color, which is the part I like the best, is the coloring. So I wanted to show you a few of them. This is a set that I'm working on for myself that will go in my art studio or my craft room, whichever you prefer to call it. And it's a set of words: peace, here you see peace, faith, and grace. All of these words are important to me, and I thought it would be fun to do a set to go in my fairly new room. We've been here for about a year now, and we just recently gotten the room finished, and I still am not all the way set up and unpacked, but I'm getting there. Sometimes you just have to stop and play, so that's what we're doing today. And I thought maybe you'd like to see how I do this. I'm not claiming this is the best way or the only way, but it's the way I do it, so that's what I'm going to show you. I enjoy doing detail work because I find it very relaxing, and it kind of gets me in a zone to where I kind of block things out and just work on what I'm looking at and put in the colors and just have a big time with it. So let's just start. Now, because it takes a while and I want to get to the coloring part sooner, I know this is going to be hard for you to see, but I'm going to do the best I can. Let me see if I go in a little bit closer, if that's helpful. A little bit. But you can, it's white paper and it's pencil, so it kind of is hard to show up. What I've done here is I've used some stencils to add words on the page, and in this case it says color everywhere. And I just use some, I have a lot of stencils that I use because it saves me so much time for basic shapes. Here's an old Fiskars, if you can see that with the glare, an old Fiskars template that was really used to cut with, but it works fine as a stencil. So all I did was I laid it out and colored the, or I'm sorry, drew the shapes, and I'm just going to show you right here real quick how that goes. And instead of a pencil, I'm going to use a pen. So basically, I just well, that wasn't too good, was it? Let's see what's going on here. There we go, come on. There. Okay. And let me move it over a little bit to where the glare is not so bad. Here we go. So I just decided on the spacing about, you know, how I wanted it in the center. So with the color, I started with the middle, letter in the middle of the paper, so that I could sort of space it out. I wasn't worried about it being exact, and you're going to find that none of what I'm doing here is exact, because if I wanted it to be exact, I would do it on the computer, and it would be, you know, then it would be exact. And that's not what I like. I want it to look hand-drawn and not like it was computer generated. But I do use the stencils and the templates because, like I said, it's faster, it's easier, and I don't have to think about that part so much. So here's what we do. I started with the L in the middle, and then I just went out from there, spaced out from there. And I wanted my letters to overlap. So let's change stencils here. So that's what I did. I didn't want them to be straight, because making something straight is a lot more difficult than it is to make it uneven. So I'm going to put the O here. Now, bear in mind, this would be in pencil. And when you draw it in pencil, you just draw the whole thing. You don't worry about it overlapping the lines or anything, because the pencil is erasable. But just so that you can see it here, I'm doing it in pen. So imagine that later, parts of this will be erased. Eventually, all the pencil will be erased. So, OLO for the middle part of color, and notice I'm changing the direction of the letters to give it a little bit more interest and to make it look like it's not supposed to be straight. It can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't matter how it looks in the end and what people think. It's what you start with and what you make it. If I make a mistake on something, I can change that mistake into a positive, and that's what I usually do. I don't usually start over. Sometimes you have to, but I don't usually start over on a project. So basically that's what I did, and you can see here it just says color. So I'm going to move those out of the way and bring this back up and get rid of this pen before I write with it by mistake. So here you can see I did the same thing here. Color, color everywhere. Now I know that these words are going to be on top of everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and work on these words and do the line work on them so that you'll be able to see it easier. I'm going to do that first. Normally I would just go through and draw in some other things that I want to be on the page, and then start my line work, or start the inking work. But this time I'm going to do it a little differently so you'll be able to see easier. And I'm going to leave this here so that we can refer to it also. Okay, so this is a piece of regular scrapbook cardstock, 12 by 12 sheet this time. I use that. I also use 8.5 by 11 cardstock, and I like a smooth finish because I use alcohol ink markers a lot of times, and the smooth finish for that is a lot nicer. There are nicer papers than this, and I do use those sometimes, especially if I'm doing a piece for somebody else. But just this is for myself, so I'm just doing it on this. I wanted it on this bigger piece of paper. The pens that I use, you can use any type of paper you want, as long as it works with the media you're using on the paper. If you're using watercolors or things like that, you need to bear in mind that your paper needs to withhold the use of those products. So all I'll be using on here is alcohol markers, India ink, paint, in the form of paint pens or craft paint, and sometimes a Sharpie, and sometimes colored pencils. So I just have to bear in mind that something that will withstand mixed media type things, not too wet, is what I need. So the pens that I use are Pitt pens by Faber-Castell. Pitt Artist pens in black. They come in different sizes. They are filled with India ink, and they do not smear when using them with the alcohol markers. So I like these really well. I tried a lot of different markers before I ended up with these. They have the sizes on the ends of the caps and also on the side of the barrel. And I basically use extra small, small, F, B, and there are a couple of other sizes that I have, M and I think 1.5 or something like that. But the extra small, the F, and the small are the ones I use most of the time. And usually I start out with the S for all the general lining because it's the size I need. So before I start doing that, I need to erase some things. And I'm going to bring this back down so you can get an idea of what I'm doing. I want my letters to be layered on top of each other. And then they're going to be layered on top of something else that's underneath, the designs that are underneath. But my letters are going to be on top of everything else, but they are layered on top of each other. So I'm going to go through and decide which letter is going to be on top of which letter. In this case, the C is going to be on top. So this line right here and this little line right here are the ones I'm going to erase. And I'm going to make my O under my L on this side. So anything that's going to be not seen gets erased. So this line will be erased. And I'll make the L on top of the O on this side. So this line will be erased. And then I think I will put the O on top of the R. So this line will be erased. I hope that makes sense. Anything that you can't see, you will erase the line, and it makes it a lot simpler. When you look at it this way, it can get a little confusing, especially once there are other things drawn behind and all those lines are there. That can get confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and erase erase the lines that are not seen. So I'm erasing. I want my O is going under my C. And I'm not worried too much about erasing it really well. I just want to kind of get rid of some of the lines so I don't get confused when I'm drawing, when I'm doing my ink work. And this is, the eraser I'm using is a black pearl eraser. And I'm not sure who makes these. I can't tell because it's rubbed off. Usually they come in an oval shape. But this one I sliced a piece off of so you have a little one that you can use a point with. But I love these erasers. I use them so much, and I really like them. So I'm just going to erase these lines real quick on all the words so that I can see where things are sitting. And sometimes it makes sense to erase, or sometimes it makes sense to bring one letter above the other letters. Like for instance in this everywhere, the letters are a little closer together, and if you covered up the biggest part of if I covered up this letter with the two beside it, you might not be able to tell what that was very well. So you just kind of, try to leave the letters so that you can tell what they are. Now see, I don't like that. I don't like the way that came out, because the E is the first letter and I really would rather it be on top. That's just my preference. So I'm just going to go back now. I'm going to put the V under the E. And I'll put this V behind this E also, because you can really tell what the V is real easily. And I guess the R is going to go under this E. I hope you can see this well enough to see what I'm doing on this white paper. I know it's a little probably difficult to tell. Now I got to figure out what to do. Do I want the R or the Y? The Y is going under because it just makes more sense to have the R on top. You can tell what the Y is. And I'm going to put the Y over the W because the W is big and you can tell what it is. And I think I'm going to put the W over the H. There we go. Now the E definitely needs to be above the R. And this R is going to be above the E on that side. Now, and I guess the H is going under. Oops, I did that wrong. When you're, I use a soft pencil. I either use a mechanical pencil, or a lot of times I use my first Ticonderoga. It's big and fat, and it's a 2 HB pencil. I have a sharpener that's big enough to use with it, and I like it because it's big and I don't lose it as often. Okay, what I wanted to say was make sure when you're drawing your guidelines that you don't press hard into the paper. I'm just barely drawing on top of that paper, because when you do, if you go back later to color, after, even if you've erased the line, when you go back to color, that dent in the paper may be picked up with your colors, and you'll be able to see it, and you will not be able to get rid of it. So bear in mind, go easy with your pencil, and just mark something that is dark enough that you can see what you're doing, because that's all you really need. Okay, so now I'm gonna line these out real quick so that we can start on what's behind it. We're not going to color anything during this this session. I think this pen is about shot. Yep, I mark them with a little white mark when they're getting low, and I still use them, but if I have to, I get rid of them. Find another one. I think this is a newer one. Okay, here we go. Now, something else I want to talk about when you're drawing. If you notice, my hand, the direction that your hand goes is a natural direction. When I draw this way, my hand curves like this. That's just a natural thing. If I draw towards me, in order to draw a straight line, I have to move my whole hand. I can try to do it just like this, but it's a little bit harder because my hand has a tendency to curve. So I probably will be moving my paper a lot. I hope that doesn't bother you, but it's just the way I do it. It makes it easier to follow the lines and to get a neat line. I don't care if it's exact, but I want it to be close, otherwise I wouldn't have used the template. See, if you start drawing in this in this direction, like this, it's a little bit harder because you have to, it's jerkier. You come towards you and you go in a curve, it's a lot smoother. So that's pretty much what I try to do. So now you can see I stopped my line where I erased. Now it's looking like the O is under the C. On this side, the O is going to be over the L. Now I have to go really slow if I'm drawing in an odd direction. But if I'm pulling it towards me, it goes a lot faster, it goes a lot straighter. And if I go sideways, it just takes more effort. And you're more likely to jig and jag around instead of doing it smoothly. See, even right here, you can see I had a little jig there because I got past my arc is what I should be saying, past my arc. Got down to here and I started pulling in an odd direction. So it does make a difference where you turn your paper. See, same here, I'm going in the different direction. So I'm going to be turning my paper. Most of the time. There are a lot of repetitive designs or little drawings in this type of work, and sometimes if you keep your hand in the same position and move your paper, your hand kind of remembers what you were doing, and you do it one right after the other, and they look a lot more alike when that's the goal. Later on, right now I'm not too, okay, now like right there, I just went over that line. I'm not really too worried about that, because later on, when the color's all in, I'll be going back and outlining these again, and probably thickening the line, neatening it up, making it neater, let's put it that way, and all that. So I'm not too concerned about it. I try not to worry about anything too much, because that takes the fun out of it. If I were trying to do a perfectly round circle or a perfectly straight line, that would be a different story. But I'm not. I'm trying to make something that I find pleasant to look at and that looks handmade, because I think people like handmade things. We have so many abilities nowadays to use computers to produce things, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I love using my computer. I remember when we first started computers, home computers, and you had you'd get a book that had an inch thick book that had line after line after line of programming code that you had to enter in, and then once you were done, a circle would appear on the screen, and then you could make the circle a color, and that was so exciting because that was something we never could do before like that. But it took so much work. If you're as old as I am, you remember the Tandy computers when they first came out. We were just so amazed at it. But to play a simple little game, I mean a very simple little game, you had to spend hours putting the code into the system to run the game. It's not anything like it is now, and I think it's wonderful. I love technology. There's so much we can do with it when it's used in the right way, and I wouldn't want to be without it. I'm glad that I was born in a time to where I saw the change, and I was young enough to where I could learn to use the technology. But I still like handmade things, and I think a lot of people do. So anyway, this is what's fun. I really enjoy doing the details, and even if no one else ever sees it, I've had a time enjoying working on things. This isn't a quick process by any means. I mean, you could see how long it's taken me to just get this far, and I had already penciled in the letters, so it would have taken twice that long. I'm going to estimate to do a large one like this, a large project like this, 12 by 12. It would take at least 8 hours. I've spent that long on some that were smaller. It just depends on how detailed you get. Now, one of the reasons I like these letters is because they're big and open. That's why I like these letters on these. See how big these are? Oh, they're about 3 inches, 3 1/4 inch, the capitals. But look how much I could do inside them. I could do lots of fun little things inside. Here's another one. See, I could put just all kinds of little things in there. And so that's why I like the open letters. These letters aren't as big, but they still are big enough to do something inside the letters and to add a little interest. This page will be busy and bright and colorful, and that's my goal on this piece, is for it to be busy and colorful and just jam-packed with little fun things. Of course, you might want yours to be less bright or less colorful. I mean, you could do it any color you want. You can do it in black and white, you can do it in browns, whatever. But it's totally up to you. But I hope you try it, because it is a lot of fun. For people who, another reason to use stencils, some people think they can't draw. I'm a little hard-headed about that. I think anybody can draw. They may not draw as well as somebody else, but you can draw. So, you know, but the stencils, they give you a place to start and give you a little fun along the way. So the next, okay, so now we have our letters in. I'm not going to do anything else to them right now. I'm going to get some things in the background so you can get an idea of how that works. I'm going to pull out a little bit so you can get a bigger picture. Let's see if I can stay in camera here. All right, the other things that I use a lot are other stencils I use a lot, which I hope they're here. Where are they? I've moved things around several times, so now I've got to figure out where here they are. You might be familiar with this type of template. These are architectural templates. I believe is probably the real name of them. And this is a set. Hold on. These actually came together, and I was using them in a smaller book, so I cut them apart so I could keep them in the book. So that's actually came as one template. These are all circles. Here's a bigger one, bigger circles. Here's another one with smaller circles. So these are the ones that I use all the time because I like circles. I like the way they look. I like circles, I like spirals, I like checks, dots, all of those things. So I'll be using all of those. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my pencil. So again, it might be a little bit difficult to see. I'm going to put in some circles in the background. I really want one a little bit bigger than this. I have a bigger circle. Oh. I don't know where it went, but we'll just use this one. My dog is woofing at me. She's a puppy and she thinks she gets all the attention. I'm not sure what she wants right now, but she's going to be woofing. So anyway, I'm drawing the circle behind here. Now, I already know my letters are going to be on top, so I'm just going to skip the letters as I go around and just draw where I would see the circle. As I'm drawing the circle, there are marks on here. Actually, I'm going to draw the whole circle so you can see. It's easier to do it that way. There are little tick marks on the template. I'm going to mark those on my paper just lightly, just enough so I can see where they are, because that will help me dissect the circle later. Let's see. Let's put one here, a smaller one. Just drawing the whole circle. Putting in my tick marks. Those actually let you make crosshairs, so you can find the center of that particular circle and also dissect the circle. And let's see, let's do a couple more this way. Marking the tick marks again. And I'll go back in a minute and do the crosshairs because I need those to divide the circles to put more interesting things in. Now, I think I'm going to put some lines going across the top, and I'm just going to draw them in by hand. They don't have to be perfect. Maybe make them in different widths. And then I'll go back and there'll be things in the lines and even make them wonky. And I'm going to put one more. Over here. And even though this one is off of the paper, so that's where my tick mark is, I'm just going to come across and mark it here so that I'll know how to divide it. Okay, now I think that pretty much gives me my designs. I'm going to take a straight edge. It doesn't have to be a ruler because I'm not measuring, I'm just drawing. I want to keep it as simple as possible. I'm not using a protractor. All I'm using are a few templates and a straight edge. Don't have to measure anything really, because there's nothing I'm trying to match a size to. See, I'm just going from marked to the mark that's across from it. There's the other mark. Just drawing a light line. Same thing. Same thing here. Now, you don't always use every one of these, but most of the time they do get used, the markings. The only thing I started out knowing on when I started this page was I wanted the words, and I knew I was going to use circles, and I thought I would put some, I'll call them borders up here, so I moved this towards the bottom. That's all I knew starting out. Everything else I just figure out as I go along. I do a lot of various crafts. I do metal, jewelry, beads, paper, sewing, glass, polymer clay, embroidery. That probably covers everything. So I have a lot of tools and different things in my head. I like when I can use different media together. So for me it's fun to like make books that have sewing in them, or jewelry that has metal and beads and clay, or whatever. So I do a lot of different things. I have a lot of tools. I've been doing all these things for about 50 years. So I've got a good start on them. I'm going to use a bigger pen. I'm going to use my F pen to draw these lines up here so you can see them. I started that out for some reason and now I forgot what I was going to say. Which often happens. Like I said, 50 years, so that means I'm old, you know. I'm not staying exactly on these lines. I'm just sort of... I could stay exactly on them. I'm just not. And this continues, so I'm coming here. I don't really like the way that looks. That needs to be different. There we go. Alright, and I'm going to draw the outsides of my circles. I'm not doing the insides yet. Now, remember I said we were going under the letters. I'm going to stop right now and erase what is not showing. So this circle is under this R. So I'm going to erase that so it looks like it's under there. I'm going to put this circle under this circle so I can erase that circle lines. Bella, please stop. Get out. Get out of there. Get out of there. Good girl. Puppies require a lot of attention. And she was asleep, taking her nap, and she just woke up, so she wants my attention. So, I know that here's my O. I can erase everything that's inside my O because none of that's going to show. Same thing. Everything that's in the letters now I can erase because they're on top of everything else. Now I don't do this until I've done my crosshairs on my circles because I might erase, like for instance right here on this E. One of my tick marks is right there inside the E. And if I erased it, I wouldn't know where it was, and I'd have to go put it back in to draw the crosshairs. So, do your crosshairs first before you start erasing inside this from the circles. It's really pretty simple. It's a pretty simple process. You just erase anything that you can't see, that you don't want to see. Alright, so that's pretty good. Now I can finish doing my lines and things will start showing up a little better for you. The puppy's name is Bella. Her real name is Dame Isabella, but we call her Bella. She's a knothead. She's so stubborn about some things, but she's very loving, very playful, and I'm home most of the time, so she's used to somebody being with her all the time. And we take her with us when we can, but when it's so cold outside like it has been this winter, it's hard to take her because she can't stay in the vehicle. Well, we've let her stay in the vehicle a couple times, but we have remote start, so if we have to go in a restaurant or something, we'll turn the truck on so she can stay warm. But we have been leaving her at home. We don't take her to Walmart because I'm afraid to leave her in the parking lot for any length of time. Sad to say, but most of the time, if it's both of us, my husband and I in the vehicle, we'll take her. He'll go in the store and I'll stay out with her so she's not cold or whatever. I can't wait for the warm weather because she loves to be outside. Yesterday we had really high winds here, and where our house is located, we have winds all the time anyway. We're just in a, I guess it's like in a hollow, and the wind just comes racing down there. But she was out, we were outside for about an hour because it was pretty nice yesterday, even though it was so windy. And I just sat and watched her play, and she chased leaves and chased leaves and chased leaves. She had such a big time. Of course, then she wants to eat them. Okay, so now we've got this all lined out. You can see that. Now you can kind of get an idea of what's happening. We've got circles in the background. The circle's behind everything. These two are on top of it. These words are on top of the circles. And the circles are on top of these lines. Now the decisions start to come in. Well, I had to decide where to put the circles, but the bigger decisions start to come in. What goes where? What are we going to do with things? So we're going to start, let's see if we have time here. We're going to work on this circle right here, and I'm going to bring us in closer again. It's not very close. Let's see if I can get it a little closer. Sorry, I'm learning to use this software. Okay, now. There we go. Alright, so we're going to work on this one right here. Now, let me pull a sample back over here to show you. Here's one. I'll show you two. Now, you don't have to don't do anything a certain way. Now here's a circle. This started out just like this circle. Started with an outline. Then I went in and I drew more circles so that I had concentric circles. So that's like here was a line, here was a line, here was a line, here was a line, here was a line. And then after I did that, I decided, oh, I want to put a big piece over here. So I didn't, I went back and erased those lines and just made a big picture over here. Here I divided this big section so that I could put different things in it. Here's another way you can do one. This circle. It just has lines drawn across and different little things in the line, between the lines. Here's another example. Same thing. This one. This is a little bit different. It's still the same idea. I still started out with the circle, but as I got down here farther, see here, this was an even circle. I don't know why I did it or what the reasoning was, but I sort of cut it off in there and made it a different shape. So the idea with having these big circles on these, let me get this down here, is so that the words would sit on them and go around the word and go around them. Same on, not that one, same on this one. Because like I said, this is a set. See how the word sits on top of there? It just gave it a place for the word to sit. Same thing on this one. And the word sits on there. On this one I brought it down a little bit because I didn't have enough space up here. That was probably a miscalculation, and so I just used it to my benefit. Okay, so what we're going to do, this one, the circle, is going to be a flower in the center. It's going to have a checkerboard. And what else do I want on it? It'll have a flower in the center, leaves around the flower, and probably then a checkerboard. And that's probably all going on the circle because it's not huge. I didn't put any real big circles on here. This one's a little bigger. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to put the checkerboard on the outside. So I want to, the other thing I like about these templates, and I don't think I finished talking about them earlier, you can get these like at Hobby Lobby in the architectural section where they have pencils and markers, rulers and things like that for architects. They have all different kinds of, they have square ones, they have ones that have furniture, they have circles, ovals, just different kinds that you can find in different sizes. That's where these are found. They're, I don't know, for a big one it might be like $8 or $10 for it. But I like them because you can see through it. See how you can see right through this? I can even see through it when it's just my pencil line here. Now you can see that pencil line right there. So once the ink is on there, you can really see through it. So it helps me to figure out which size I need because I can absolutely see through it. Here, that was the original size. So I know that if I go over here, it's going to be bigger. If I go down this way, it's going to be smaller. So I'm going to look at this one. That's smaller. That's a smaller space between there than I want. So I'm going to go to the next one. That looks about right to me for a checkerboard. Sort of like here. But I'm just going to make a two-layer one. Now, remember we drew those crosshairs in there. On this template, every circle has the tick marks. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put these tick marks for this smaller circle. I'm going to line it up on the tick marks on the larger circle, or on the crosshairs. So now I know if I draw this line, it's going to be in the center. It's going to be placed in the center of the other circle. It's not going to be more to one side than another because I've lined the marks up and that centers it. Alright, so I'm going to go down another 2 sizes, I think. Yeah, I think that'll be good. I'm lining up my tick marks again. with the crosshairs. I'm drawing this circle. Okay, so now I'm just doing 2. This one has 3 rows. I'm just doing 2 rows on this one for the checkerboard. Then my leaves are going to go in. I need to make another one. Need to switch out templates here because I'm getting smaller. So I want my leaves to be, oops. If I look at this space right here, the amount of space I've left for here, I don't think that's enough room for my leaves. I think I want my leaves a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go down a size, give a little bit more space, because this row is going to be the leaves right here. So this is going to be the flowers. In this case, I'm just going to do 1 row of petals, and then I need a center for the flowers. So I'm taking the little bitty ones even have the tick marks. Line them up with the crosshairs, and there you go. Alright, so now I've got this set up to do 2 rows of checkerboard, 1 row of leaves, 1 row of petals, and a center. That's all I need to do with my pencil. Usually at this point, I'll stop and work on this one, because I want to know what it's going to look like before I go to something different. Anything that you feel unsure about, you can do with the pencil. And before I go any farther, I'm going to divide these sections so that it'll be easier for me to do even stuff. So I could sit here and measure this. I could take somewhere I have a little protractor that always disappears because I never use it. Here it is. I could take a protractor and I could say, okay, let's see now. This is half a circle, so that's 180 degrees. This is perpendicular, so that's 90 degrees. So if I want to half this, that's got to be 45 degrees. So I'm going to lay this down here, and I'm sorry, but that just takes too much effort to suit me. That's too much math, too much effort. I know how to do it, but I don't really want to. It makes me stress out. So I'm just going to estimate. Back to the first thing I said, this is not computer generated. This is hand drawn. So I want it to look hand drawn. So I'm just going to look up here and think, between these 2 points, where's halfway? So I think this is about halfway. So if I lay my straight line across there and just draw it all the way, I can see that looks pretty good. I can tell that it's just a little bit off, but I'm not worried about it. I don't care. It looks fine. It looks close enough. Same thing over here. Now, obviously, if I drew my mark here, it's going to be ridiculous, because see, that's going to be way too big. So, you just eyeball it and see. If you can't stand to do that, if you have to measure, then measure to your heart's content. But I'm not going to do it because I find it too distracting. So that's pretty much enough of a guide for me to do what I'm going to do next. And I'm going to take my S pen, and I'm going to draw my petals. Well, let's draw the center first. There's my center. Now I'm going to put 2 petals in each one of these pie shapes. So if you're worried about getting it centered and you want to draw them out, feel free. You can even draw another line in there if you want to and do this. But normally I just start in the center, go up, curve over, and come down this line. That way, then I know that it's pretty centered. Sometimes I don't even do that. You just go and come down the middle. And sometimes I get one that's a little bigger than another one, but, I don't care. Now, obviously you could draw these many different ways. You could make the petals pointed, or square on the ends, or whatever, You could put three petals in each one of these, which I do sometimes, or 4, or whatever you want to do. See, that one looks skinnier, but I'm not worried. Okay, so there are all my petals, and my center is kind of like there. Now next, I'm going to use my guidelines so that I get fairly evenly spaced leaves. I could do it several ways. What I mostly do is I look at my drawing and think, okay, now what can I use as a marker? Well, I have these petals. I can use them. I have the space between the petals. I have this line. So I have a lot of choices. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw leaves from this point here, where those lines cross, down to the middle between these two petals where they have that little dip. So I'm just going to use a curve and draw it down. Same thing on the other side. And I'm drawing it all the way down to the middle. I find it easier, really a lot easier to turn my paper when I'm doing these, because that way the curves look a little bit more uniform. I'm not worried if they're not exactly uniform, but you know, you don't want one to be real skinny and one to be real fat. So it kind of helps to give you some space to see. That one's kind of off because that petal was so big. Once this is colored, it's going to blend all in and you don't notice little mistakes very much. If it's something huge, you'll probably notice it. But little things, little differences, they don't really show up very much. Okay, now that's fine. I have petals, but I still have all this big space in between that I want to do something with. So, once again, I'm going to look and see what a marker is. I know I've got like halfway between these two. If I want to put a leaf in the middle of these, I could start here, and just to give my eye somewhere to go to, or my pen somewhere to go to, I look at it and I think, okay, well, this is about halfway between here and here, so that's a good, good point. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to do the same thing all the way around. Start here, halfway. Start here, halfway. Halfway. Oops. Halfway. And I can just do that all the way around. Okay, so now I've got my leaves. Okay, I can get in the center here. At this point, I can add some more veins, or I can go on to the checkerboard. I'm going to go ahead and on these big leaves, I'm going to add a little jicky jag down the center. And notice how if there is a space right here, if there is a space between these petals, I'm going all the way down into there because I want it to look dimensional, like it's behind the petals. I'm not going to do anything to the big petals yet. Okay, so now we have our center, we have our petals, we have our leaves, and now we have a checkerboard. Now I've already got these nice dividing lines to help me out, so I'm going to draw them in. This checkerboard's going to be fairly what's the word, the squares are going to be fairly close to the same size, and I can't think of the word I'm trying to find, but that happens. My 11-year-old granddaughter is pretty good about filling in my words when I can't find them. When I get distracted or I'm working on something, sometimes I can't find my words I need to use. I have to think about it. So I'm just drawing in the lines that I'd already penciled. Then I have to think, okay, now how big do I want my checkerboard to be? So I'm just going to divide this again, and practically in the middle, or close to the middle. Now see, right now I have my leaves to go by. So I know they're close to the middle, so I'm just going to use them to draw my lines. Now, I've got all these spaces that are fairly even. Now I can divide those into smaller spaces. I think if I were just to divide that in half, those would be way too big for the size of the circle. So I need to divide them into thirds. It makes more work, but it'll look better. So that's all I do. I just put 2 lines in here, and they're not going to be perfectly even, and that's quite all right. So we almost have one circle done. A lot of people would call this a mandala or a mandala. I call them circles. It's kind of the same idea. It's a circle that has repeated designs in it. Go out from the center. Alright, now let's turn this back around. Zoom back out a little bit. So here we go. We've got our first circle done. Now I might go in there later and put some more lines on there, but for now, that's done. You don't have to worry about erasing your pencil lines until you get ready to color. Once you're ready to color, then all the lines need to be erased, because otherwise you won't be able to erase them. Once you put that alcohol ink markers over them, it usually will not erase. Occasionally it will, but usually it will not. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here and continue on the next part, which we will do some more circles, put in some things up here, and we might even only do a few things and start coloring so you'll get an idea. But eventually we'll finish the whole thing. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this so far. I hope it was understandable and clear enough to see. And I hope you come back and watch the next part. And be sure to look around you everywhere, because there is color everywhere for you to see. Thanks. Come back.